I'll start out by making it categorically clear that I am vehemently in defense of the romance genre. Hi, I'm Carina Gaskell, a thought daughter turned romance author with a penchant for critique and cultural commentary. Recently, somebody asked me what my inspiration for writing romance novels was. I explained that beyond my love for, well, love, I find that romance is a fertile ground for exploring social dynamics, race, gender, sexuality, class, interpersonal politics, and other social, political, and even ecological issues that are relevant to me and so many others. I've always maintained that romance is political. My friends from college and even before that, when I was still just a teenager, can vouch for this. Who gets their happy ever after? Why? When? What criteria must be met for a Filipina to feel she has earned her happy ever after, and how is it different from a white woman's definition while she lives abroad? So, by this alone, my books are already beyond just simple girl meets guy, they fall in love, have sex, the end. Of course, I can't and I won't speak for other authors, but Kennedy Ryan, in her Rolling Stone article, which I super recommend that you read, calls this the intersection between swoon and social commentary. How the context that black women live in makes black romance an act of resistance. I feel similarly writing my romance novels about Filipinas. I'm making more of an effort to also include guy Filipinos, like male Filipinos, in my books. We've been relegated to the background for so long, and in post colonial Philippines, years and years of American imperialism has taught us to prefer foreign published books over our own. I dare you to go to your nearest bookstore and consider how much shelf space they afford books by Filipino authors. Are we not segregated in a single Filipiniana section regardless of genre? Who is front and center in store? When we say Asian reads, is it primarily Filipino writers or other Asian writers? When I went to a bookstore in the gig, I won't name names, there was an entire section dedicated to Japanese literature, and right in front of it was about 2 to 3 shelves of Filipino books, the Filipiniana section essentially, which again was sorted by nature of being written by Filipino authors, not so much genre. Just to add this really quickly while I'm editing, there are Filipino authors in the genre sections, but they are the ones published internationally. So make of that what you will. And yeah, it was interesting because the business side of it says people just don't want to read books by Filipino authors, that there's no demand and therefore no money in it. But it's not true. Like, that is absolutely not true. The droves of attendees at the Manila International Book Fair and the Philippine Book Festival disproves that. If you find that all the romance books that you've read are lacking in depth, I'm sorry to say, but that's a skill issue. The romance genre is so vast, limiting yourself to the top 10, often white books on BookDoc, and then generalizing the entire genre is to discredit the hard work of so many authors, particularly Black, Indigenous authors of color, who don't receive the same marketing support or platform as our white counterparts. And that's not even getting into the exploitative, predatory actors in the publishing industry that claim to want to champion our stories when really they're just trying to make a quick buck from us and build their catalog, right? They don't actually care about our stories. So we've covered whether romance has any depth, but now we go on to issues of craft. I hear people complain about romance books, most particularly having bland prose, or in other words, serviceable writing. It gets the job done. And I think this is what feeds the divide between literary fiction and genre fiction. But romance is not the only genre that struggles with this. This is, as I said, an issue of craft, especially contemporary craft. The proliferation of writing tips that lack nuance, such as show, don't tell, and write the movie you see in your head, has resulted in writing such as he walked towards the door, reached for the knob, and turned it, which is more precisely, he opened the door. It's stage direction. It's writing in a world where authors are hoping for movie adaptations, which is fine, and majority of people don't read. Netflix executives tell screenwriters to announce what they're doing so that viewers who have a program on in the background while scrolling or doing something else can follow along. We're no longer mindfully consuming, or at least a majority of us aren't. We want to switch our brains off and be entertained because engaging with the work or using our imagination, having to come up with our own conclusions instead of being spoon fed meaning, is considered exhausting. People think that if a romance book doesn't explicitly mention its politics, say on class issues, and instead shows it in how a billionaire main male character treats the working class female main character, that it is lacking in politics. There's a Substack article that I read, but I can't find anymore. So if anyone knows what I'm talking about, please send it my way. But it spoke about the rise in billionaire romances and how it spoke to our economical context. In it, the writer argues that women have to be able to buy into a happy ever after. And without the security of money, the happy ever after doesn't feel sustainable beyond the last pages of the book. And people want to believe that their favorite characters do live happily ever after. And so having a billionaire as a love interest is an easy way to tackle that issue. In other words, readers can rest easy that money won't be an issue in this book. Recently, though, the publishing industry has moved away from billionaire romances, given the current climate, the current political climate, and our economy, and people are just tired of aspirational content. And we've moved towards, I believe, cowboy romances, which is, according to some, a way for the publishing industry to keep romance white, but that is a conversation for another day. And anti intellectualism will respond to these points with, is it really that deep? And my answer to that is yes. As always, it is. We're seeing an erosion of our critical thinking skills and our grasp on craft as writers before our very eyes. We no longer trust our readers to read between the lines, which is undermining their intelligence. We've done away with subtlety in favor of holding their hands and giving them stage direction and step by step instruction manuals instead of setting them free and letting them navigate our made up worlds however they see fit. I can go on and on and on, but again, this is not limited to romance. It is an issue of craft. But that doesn't mean the genre lacks depth or is stupid or inferior to literary fiction. Do you know how hard it is to write an entertaining, lighthearted book? As William Blake put it, to see the world in a grain of sand. Baskin Sons on Threads says that romance is tied to persuasion. Good romance has to make a case for its characters, as they put it, all the time, on every page, in every passage, and in the best ones, in every line. They go on to say, you can make a beautiful man kiss a beautiful woman all you want, but that doesn't mean I believe what you're selling. Now, on matters of plot, a very common critique is that romance is predictable. It always ends the same way. But that's the same for every genre fiction. There are genre conventions, reader expectations, and a criteria for a book to meet. Otherwise, what is the point of genre, which I might remind you is a marketing tool for categorization and commerce? To hate on the romance genre because you find it predictable is to value the end result instead of the journey. It's like saying living is pointless because it always ends in death. But is it not what we do between birth and death that matters? Is it not the journey, the story, and not the ending that we read for? I think this is also a result of late stage capitalism, where we're taught to min max our time. We're told if we don't gain anything tangible from an activity, then it's a waste of time. It's why there's such a proliferation of those AI book summarization apps that tech bros love to use, so that instead of spending, say, 10 hours reading a book, they can claim to have read it in 10 minutes. But you lose out on so much doing that. So much of the golden books are golden because of the foundation laid before it. As writers, we're taught that every sentence should move the story forward, should progress not just the physical exterior plot as in things that happen, but trigger even internal changes within the character. Again, it's reductive to speak about stories this way, because every story follows specific emotional beats that ideally result in a satisfying end. Hero's journey, anyone? There's also the critique that it's all just tropes. I hear you, it's valid. But in the same way we have our own respective sexual and romantic preferences, the same can be said in romance books. There's a demand, authors meet it. The demand I strive to meet is to write books that I want to read but can't find in the specific way I want it. because I know that if I want it, there are people like me who also want to read it. And I'm sure many other authors will echo the same sentiments. Many fanfic authors will take the characters they love and put them in, for example, alternate universes where they want to read about those characters but in a situation where there's only one bed. There's literally nothing wrong with that. Or wanting to read a book for a specific purpose, whether that's intellectual, sexual gratification or titillation, or even just pure entertainment. Not everything has to be for us, no matter how algorithms and individualistic propaganda have programmed us to think so. I've read a lot of romances that don't speak to me at all, but I value it because it speaks to so many people. It gives them what they're looking for. And that's the thing with romance, it's very personal. It has to resonate with you emotionally. If it doesn't, that's fine. But to speak ill of those who do enjoy it is unnecessary. I prefer friends to lovers over enemies to lovers. That doesn't mean there's no value in enemies to lovers. There are people that hate workplace romance because they don't believe in what is described as shitting where you eat, but others love it. There will always be people who love something, people who hate it, and people who just don't care about it. That's the nature of art and media. And on to my final point, really the boss fight in the criticism against the romance genre is misogyny. Romance is a genre dominated by women readers and women writers. Since the printing press was invented and women could read, there has been fear mongering over the impact it would have on women's intellect or behavior. In Christy Stratus's article on this very topic, she mentions that Victorians thought it was dangerous for women to read the newspaper because it was too intense for them. They were too delicate, so it was up to their husbands to share what was appropriate. She said that novels were seen as more acceptable, but not all. She quotes Martin Lyons in his work, New Readers in the 19th Century Women, Children, Workers. I quote, novels were held suitable for women because they were seen as creatures of the imagination, of limited intellectual capacity, both frivolous and emotional. Unquote. People have perennially been concerned about written works or media consumed by women corrupting their minds. Does anyone remember the valid critique of Twilight as romanticizing abuse? Like I said, it's a valid critique, but I think a lot of women have internalized that to mean that they have to be super duper careful about what they read. And yeah, I agree, you have to be careful. But a lot of people also took it to mean that every woman who reads it has no capacity for critical thinking and will mimic the things that they read about in real life. But that's not true. Dark romance readers, for example, are not trying to fuck serial killers in real life, or not all, I can't speak for everyone. But romance and fiction more generally is a space to explore these things. It's safer to read fiction than to try it out in real life. But I hear you, casual consumption with no critical thinking might lead many people to think certain behaviors are okay. But that's not an issue with romance, that's an issue with critical thinking and media literacy and the state of our education. To limit the conversation to just romance and to blame romance for how external issues manifest within its spaces and to not hold the causes of those external issues accountable, just romance, is misogyny. There is, of course, nuance to this, but the point is, women should be allowed to read and write what they want. And romance isn't a stupid, shallow genre because there are incredible writers using the space to explore socio political issues. It's an incredible vehicle to capture cultural zeitgeist and our views on love and social dynamics, as well as class issues, race and gender and sexuality, and so much more. And if you don't see that in the romance books that you're reading, then find better romance books to read. And if you still don't like romance, that's fine. Just stop calling people stupid because they do. I will leave you with a friendly little reminder that it is not the responsibility of a woman or a romance reader to justify their interests to you. It doesn't have to make sense to you in order for it to be valid. Bye.